We continue now at the top of Daf Tesvavam and Beis Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 15b. On the previous Amud, Rava said if you have a situation where the Kohen did the holacha of the blood, he did the conveying of the blood properly, but then the blood was returned and brought back to the starting point, and then a zar, a non-Kohen, does the holacha, it will for sure be possible in such a situation because that second holacha of the zar is absolutely necessary because it needs to be brought near the Mizbeach. And the Gemara here continues, La'amtuye, again, it's tzarich la'amtuye, it's necessary to bring it to this point, and therefore since the holacha is necessary, that means that what the zar is doing, since the zar is not allowed to do the holacha, therefore it's going to be possible, it's going to be disqualified. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Yirmiyah Rav Ashi. Rav Yirmiyah said to Rav Ashi, Hachi Amar Rav Yirmiyah mi Difti. This is what Rav Yirmiyah from Difti said. Hatzarich lamtuye. This issue of tzarich lamtuye, the fact that it's necessary to do that part of the avoda. Let's say in this case, it's necessary to do the halacha to bring it to the mizbeach. It's actually a machlokas Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbanan. That's actually a machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan. A few girsos, the Shenuya Nischo says instead of Amar le Rav Yirmiyah Rav Ashi, it's Ravina Rav Ashi. Ravina says to Rav Ashi, and the Bach notes that instead of Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbanan, it's a machlokas between Rabbi Lazar v'Rabbanan. In any case, this issue of tzarich lamtuye is a machlokas between Rabbi Lazar and the Rabbanan. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Lazar says, "Hamahalech b'makom shetzarich lahalech." If somebody does the holacha in a place where it's necessary to walk, you need to do that holacha in order to bring the blood to the mizbeach. So then that's considered critical and it's considered an avoda and machshava posela. So if you have a wrong intent, it will disqualify. Makom she'ein tzarich lahalech. But let's say it's a place where you didn't need to walk in that area, and so you're doing the holacha, you're walking, conveying the blood in an area where it's not necessary, so that's not a critical part of the avoda, and it will not be considered an avoda, and ein machshava poselas, therefore a wrong intent would not disqualify. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rava, and Rava says, Hakol modim, everybody admits, everybody agrees, Kiblo bachutz, let's say he receives the blood in the outside. This does not mean outside of the Beis HaMikdash. It means to say some distance from the Mizbeach. V'yechniso b'fnim, and then he brings it inside. Again, it doesn't mean he brings it into the Beis HaMikdash. It just means he brings it closer to the Mizbeach. Zeu hiluch shetzarich lahalich. This is a holacha that is necessary. You need to convey that blood, bring that blood closer to the Mizbeach. But Kiblo b'fnim, let's say he receives the blood inside, meaning close to the Mizbeach, and then he actually walks it away from the Mizbeach, away from the direction it needs to go. This would be a not necessary holacha. And Rava continues, Lo nechliku, the whole machlokus between Rabbi Lazar and the Rabbanan and the Mishnah is in the following situation. Lo nechliku ela k'sheichniso, they argue in a case where it's brought close to the Mizbeach, v'chazar v'hotzio, and then it's brought away from the Mizbeach. So in such a situation, Mar Savar, one holds hatzarech lamtuye. This is a case of tzarech lamtuye. Now you're going to need to bring it back to the Mizbeach, and therefore that's considered a holacha. Umar Savar lav kihiluch hatzarech la'avoda dami. That's not considered a hiluch tzarech le'avoda because it already was close to the Mizbeach. Now you just have to bring it back again close to the Mizbeach, and that would not be considered a necessary avoda. And Rashi explains bachutz in the outside, again, lahalon min ha-mizbeach. The word bachutz over here means that it's far away from the Mizbeach. V'echniso b'fnim, and when they use the term v'echniso b'fnim, it means letzad ha-mizbeach, it means towards the Mizbeach. V'hotzio lachutz, and so again, Rava said, the whole machlokas is when it's brought away, kolomar richko min ha-mizbeach. It was close to the Mizbeach, and then it's brought further away from the Mizbeach. That's where they're arguing, hanach chutz upnim kulu ba'azar. Again, the words chutz and pnim over here, it's all taking place in the azar. Nothing is taking place in the actual Beis HaMikdash. And Rashi continues, Hatzarech lamtuye, one opinion is, it now needs to be brought back to the Mizbeach. Meaning to say, if you would then bring it back to the Mizbeach with a disqualifying intention, it would be disqualified. It would be disqualified because that holacha is necessary. But the other one says, Lav ki lachatzarech lavoda dami, that's not considered a holacha that's necessary. Hoel v'shalol latzarech hotzio al chinam, because he took it away from the Mizbeach for no reason. It already was close to the Mizbeach. That's the only reason. So that's the only reason he needs to bring it back to the Mizbeach. And the point over here is to say that the machlokas between Rabbi Lazar and the Rabbanan is again specifically by tzarech lamtuye, which means a situation where it was close to the Mizbeach and then for no reason it was taken away from the Mizbeach, so now it's tzarech lamtuye, it's necessary to bring it back to the Mizbeach. Is that considered to be a significant holacha, in which case if you have an intention that's disqualifying, it would be disqualified, or not, maybe it's not considered a significant holacha, because really there was no need to take it away from the Mizbeach. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei Abaye. Abaye asks a question from the following Brisa. The Brisa says, Rebbe Lozer Omer, Rebbe Lozer says, Hamahalech mokom shetzarech lahalech. If the person is doing the holacha in a place that it's necessary to do the holacha, machshava posela. So then if you have a wrong machshava, it disqualifies. Keitzad, how so? Kiblo bachutz, let's say he receives the blood some distance from the mizbeach, v'echniso lefnim, and then he brings it close to the mizbeach. Zeu hiluch shetzarech lahalech. That would be considered a holacha that's necessary. So the machshava would disqualify. Kiblo b'fnim, if he receives the blood near the mizbeach, v'hotzio lachutz, and then he carries it away from the mizbeach, zeu hiluch shein tzarech leilech. That would be a holacha that's not necessary, and it would be that kind of holacha where the machshava would not disqualify. And the implication is that the bringing it back, the returning it to the mizbeach in such a situation, would actually be considered a necessary holacha, and therefore it would in fact disqualify. It's only the actual holacha away from the mizbeach that's not a holacha, and that machshava would not disqualify at that point, but bringing it back is necessary. That seems to be the opinion of Rebbe Lozer, and therefore again, Rebbe Lozer was really just talking about a situation where you're taking it away from the mizbeach, but everyone would agree where you're bringing it towards the mizbeach, that's necessary. Amar Lei said to me, Tanya, if you have a brisa like that, then you have a brisa, then in fact that's what Rebbe Lozer holds. And Rashi explains, Itanya demo debar Rabbi Eliezer. Tanya, if you have a brisa that Rebbe Lozer admits in such a situation, so that's what the brisa says. And Rashi continues and notes, Vein machlokas bein Rebbe Lozer l'Tanakama. There's no machlokas between Rebbe Lozer and the Tanakama. Ela Rabbi Shimon avua koyu polig. Rather, Rebbe Lozer is arguing on Rabbi Shimon, his father. Again, Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah said that holacha is not an avoda, and therefore machshava does not disqualify by holacha at all. And Rebbe Lozer is responding, that's true in a situation where the holacha is not necessary, where it's being taken away from the mizbeach, but if the holacha is necessary, it's being taken to the mizbeach, then it is an avoda, and the machshava would disqualify, and the Tanakam as well held that machshava can disqualify by holacha. Hadron aloch kol hazvachim, we will return to you, parak kol hazvachim. This is the end of the first parak of Meseches Zvachim. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe, and take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel, and we will now continue with the second parak of Meseches Zvachim. And the parak begins with the Mishnah, Kol hazvachim, all the karbanos shekiblu daman, zar onen tvul yom. If the person who's receiving the blood is a zar, is a non-kohen, and onen is a kohen who's in a period of acute mourning, that's mourning for a relative and the body hasn't even been buried yet. A tvul yom is somebody who's immersed that day, but he's not totally pure, he's waiting for the end of the day. Umechusar kippurim, somebody lacking atonement, that also he's not completely purified, this kohen, because he has to bring the atonement, the karban. Umechusar begadim, or if he's not wearing the begadim of the kahuna. Shalo rachatz yadayim v'raglayim, let's say he didn't wash his hands or his feet. Oril, if he's uncircumcised. Tameh, if he's tameh, he's impure. Yoshev, if he's sitting. Omed al gabe kalim, if he's standing on vessels. Al gabe behema, on an animal. Al gabe ragle chavero, or on the feet of his friend. Pasul, it's going to be disqualified. Kibel besmol, if he receives the blood with his left hand. Pasul, it's going to be disqualified. Rabbi Shimon machsher, Rabbi Shimon says it's kosher. And the Gemara says, Zor menolan, from where do we know a non-Kohen is not allowed to do the kabbalas hadam, the receiving of the blood? Tetani Levi, because Levi taught Daber el Aaron vilbon of Lamor, it says, speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, V'inozru mikodshe b'nei Yisrael, they'll separate from the kodshe b'nei Yisrael. Rashi says, V'inozru mikodshe gabi makrivim b'tumah ksiv. This is written by bringing karbonos and tumah. You're not allowed to bring a carbon b'tumah. To samach le kol ish asher yikrav mikol zarachem, because the pasuk near that, again, that's the context of the pasuk. And so the Gemara continues, B'nei Yisrael l'mu'utei mai. When it says here, B'nei Yisrael, the sons of Israel, what is that coming to exclude? Rashi says, B'nei Yisrael l'mu'utei mai, karbon shel mihu memait milahazer kohanim al atuma. It seems to be excluding a carbon of some other person where there is no warning against kohanim not to bring it b'tumah. So what are we excluding? Ilema l'mu'utei nashim. If you're going to say we're excluding women, karbon nashim b'tumah karev, do you think you can bring the carbon of women b'tumah? Is that possible? Rashi says, Ilema l'mu'utei b'nos Yisrael. If you say that it's B'nei Yisrael v'lo b'nos Yisrael, if you say it means to exclude the daughters of Israel, karbon nashim shelo huzaru kohanim ilahakriva b'tumah, meaning kohanim are not warned against bringing the carbon of women b'tumah. Karbon nashim b'tumah karev, is that true? Can a carbon of a woman be brought? Can the karbonos of women be brought b'tumah? Bitmiya, it's a wonder. V'chi yesh koach b'karbon nashim lidchos hatumah. Is there strength in the carbon of women? It can push off tumah. And so the Gemara continues, Ela rather l'mu'utei ovdei kochavim, it's to exclude the karbonos of ovdei kochavim, of idol worshippers, of non-Jews. And Rashi explains, Ela l'mu'utei karbon ovdei kochavim, ovid kochavim shashilach olaso. Let's say an ovid kochav, an idolater, sends his carbon ola. Kidetanya is ulin in a brisa ba kol shochten and chulin. Ishish l'rabos as of the kochavim shenodrim nedarim unadavos ki Yisrael. It says ishish, that comes to exclude even non-Jews are able to donate karbanos just like a Yisrael. So maybe over there's no warning about bringing that carbon betuma. But that doesn't make sense either. Hashta now, tzitz lo meratza. In such a situation, the tzitz of the Kohen Gadol is not going to be meratza. It's not going to allow tumah to be accepted. The Yamar Mar, because the master said over ovde kochavim, that when it comes to the idolaters, bein b'shogeg, bein b'mezid, whether it happened by mistake or on purpose, lo hurtza, it is not going to be accepted. So if that's the case, so betuma karev, do you think you can actually bring the karbanos betuma? That would make no sense. We're actually stricter when it comes to the karbanos of ovde kochavim. Rashi says, Hashta tzitzlo meratza, al tumas olin shebekarbono, could go nitma hadam. This is talking about, let's say, something happens to what's being offered in the carbon, it becomes tameh, so the blood becomes tameh. Oh, hachelav, or the chelav becomes tameh. Kederech shemeratza al shal Yisrael, by a Yisrael brings a carbon, and you have nitma hadam, the tzitz is meratza, the tzitz appeases in that situation. The Amar Marve Menachos Ba'akomitz Rabbah, the master said in Menachos, lo hurtza, it's not going to appease, it won't be accepted. T'chsiv l'ratzon lahem, the tzitz only works lahem, it works for them, for the Jewish people. V'lo lovdei kochavim, it does not work for the idolaters. So b'tumas haguf yeikarev, you think you could bring the carbon when the Kohen is tamei? Bitmi, it's like a wonder. V'alu afilu etzel carbon yachid Yisrael lo nidachas. Even by a Jew, an individual carbon of a Jew, we say that tumas haguf is not pushed off. So certainly not by the carbon of an ovid kochavim. And so the Gemara says, Elo rather hachi kamar. This is what the pasuk means to say when it says Daber al Aaron v'elbanav leimor v'yinazru mikadshe b'nei Yisrael. It means as follows: v'yinazru mikadshe b'nei Yisrael v'lo yechalalu. You got to read the pasuk all together. It's b'nei Yisrael v'lo yechalalu. Rashi explains al hachi kamar v'yinazru mikadshe yisrachaku b'tuma mikol kachim. You put a comma over there. You have to stay away from tuma by all kachim, by all karbanos. V'yinazru mikadshe, and then read it b'nei Yisrael lo yechalalu. And Bnei Yisrael shouldn't profane, meaning Vahazorim, the non-Kohanim, Afheim Yinazru, they also should separate. They should not be involved in the avoda. Kadesh lo yechalim, so they don't profane it. Limed al zar sha'avad. This teaches that if a non-Kohen does the avoda, shachila les hakachim, that profanes the kachim, upesalim, and it disqualifies them. That's the pasuk again that a zar is disqualified. And the Gemara continues. Devei Rabbi Yishmael taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael was taught Asya bekal v'chomer mi balmum. We learn out the disqualification of a zar from a balmum, from one who has a blemish. Ma balmum sha'ochel. If a balmum is allowed to eat from karbanos im avad chilal, but if he does the avoda, it's profaned. Rashi says balmum sha'ochel is kadshe kachim. A balmum can eat kadshe kachim. Tichsiv mi kadshe hakadashim umin hakadashim yochel. It says he can eat from the kadshe kachim and from the kachim, but im avad chilal. But if he does the avoda, it's profaned. Tichsiv mum bo v'lo yechalas mikdashi. That's what it says in the pasuk. He has a blemish and he should be mechala the mikdash. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tazayin Amud Aleph.